Hey, Fairview family. I am excited to be able to join you this morning as well with some extra special guests. So to my right, I have my wife, Courtney, and we also have another couple across from us. And go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Hello, everyone. I'm Taylor Worthen.
And I'm Daniel Worthen.
We're married. We're not siblings.
Thank you for the clarification. And I know a lot of our church members, they refer to you as I'm new to the church, like, oh, we have this really good young couple that helps and volunteers. And many of them may know that you've helped in the past as far as with the youth group and things that we've had. And so you've played a role already in this church. And I guess maybe a little bit is, how long have you guys been here? Obviously, you've been here since probably marriage, but how long has that encompassed for you guys that you've been at Fairview?
I mean, my family's been part of the church for my whole life, and then many, many times that. But I mean, I was born in Alaska, and I moved here when I was about 22. Full time, so I've really been coming here for the last 5 years solid, with sometimes when I was living in Redmond and coming back, so it's been on and off, but for the most part 5 years.
Yeah, and I really got involved because Daniel and I were dating, and I wanted to be a part of his family, and I knew that church, and especially Fairview, was a huge part of their family. So through that, I had the opportunity to intern at one point here a few years ago, and then we started helping out with youth, and we've just kind of continued to be a part of the community for, the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And you're right. I mean, if you know the Worthens and you know those parts, they've been a part of the church for dating back to the Woodland Park days. Yeah. And I think that's been a common theme as well as we've landed here. A lot of the people that I meet, they say, I've been a part of Woodland Park Church since I was 20, or I was born into that church, or, for some people that could be, almost 70 years. So that's interesting. And I think you bring a unique perspective to that. Another thing that I'm excited about is there's couples that are younger than Courtney and I. And that gives me hope as we continue to move forward, that there is another generation outside of our norm and our church family that is passionate about Jesus. They want to see people in the whole city of Seattle impacted for his glory, that have a kingdom mindset. And those things are encouraging to me, because what we have, being a little bit younger than the average age of our church, is a platform and a legacy to build upon. People that have gone before us that we can continue to pour in. And so I'm so grateful for that. And so hopefully some of those that are watching, they can look back into yesteryear and relate to you guys a little bit and say, hey, I was that couple, maybe at Woodland Park in that time, but a part of the Fairview family. And so I'm grateful that you guys have joined us this morning. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your ministry. One of the things that I wanted to say is, we've been talking about stories in the storm, and I know that a lot of people have been impacted in different ways, and you guys are about to share some of your ways that you've been impacted, but some people have had it where it's been a storm, and some people haven't had a storm that's been tragic. It's been more of an inconvenience, and some of those things. We had Pastor Bob last week that shared a little bit of, I'm surviving. No, surviving isn't the word. We've been fine, and we've been doing it. So there's just a different perspective that people have shared. But go ahead and run us down, and I'll start with you, Daniel. What does the day-to-day life look like, since probably that mysterious day that everybody has, it's a little bit variance, but that mysterious day in March that everyone refers to, and what has that looked like since then?
Yeah, I would say going from a company that very much values just the interactions between coworkers and going into work every single day and experiencing that, to all of a sudden, like you said, in the mysterious day in March, I believe it was March 16th, they told us, you know what, you got to start trying to work from home right now. And they gave us a week buffer period before we absolutely had to. And I think that was, just revving it up. And it was exciting at first, but being home by myself, 24/7, 365, well, I I guess only the last 3 months.
Feels like that one.
Yeah.
Feels like several years.
I don't even know what year it is right now. It's been really difficult because I'm a people person. I love my company. I love my coworkers. I love everything about just life in general. And I think that being secluded at home has been really lonely, and it's been really hard. I'm very thankful to actually have my job. I know that so many others don't, and that, we are very blessed because of that. But it definitely has taken a financial toll, or not financial toll, sorry, an intellectual toll, like just on my emotional and mental state. And I think that that's been the hardest so far.
Yeah, and for me, it's actually completely different because I work in a clinic in the university district, so we do offer some essential services. Though we're not seeing as many patients, we are staying open, so I'm actually going into the office almost every day. So unlike Daniel, I am getting that social interaction. And I think that there was only probably one time that I can think about where it really hit me that this is real and that other people are suffering, and that kind of came about when I wanted us to invite our family over, because I'm like, even though friends are going to stay away, like family's always going to come and hang out, like, right? That's the expectation. And he reminded me that no, I mean, this is a serious thing. Like we need to distance. Like there's children involved. You can't just have it right now. And it dawned on me that this isolation that I'm feeling in this moment is what people have been feeling, if not several months, and it's a real thing. So I feel like I've definitely had to navigate some empathy there.
Well, thank you guys for sharing that, because I know it impacts everyone so differently, even within your own, household between the two of you, and how that can just affect a marriage too, coming from different, perspectives. But going off of that, what are some things that you've had to maybe put off or even give up during this time? Obviously, Daniel, you've given up going into an office per se and, visiting with family, but what are some things that, have really been challenging in that area for you?
Yeah, family is definitely the biggest thing, and seeing my friends. I've got some friends over in Alaska, and just not being able to travel to see them has been really difficult in this time. Again, I'm a people person. I love that aspect of life, and I think the solitude of just like trying to find myself in this time has been really difficult. But I think ultimately I've been trying to get over, this social divide of trying to, Zoom call with my friends, hang out with them that way, and do everything I can to make things as normal as possible. But
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, all the same. And I think that one thing is that like our parents, his parents really, they're not here, and they were supposed to be several weeks ago, and we kind of know when they're going to be back, but again, we're not sure. And so we're missing them greatly, and so our siblings. And I know that, in addition to Daniel, I think that everyone in our city is feeling, specifically in Seattle and probably around the nation, is feeling that, a lot of things are no longer available to us, like concerts, festivals. I was telling you guys, I signed up for a half marathon that I was questioning how very committed I was to, which got canceled. Small blessing in disguise, which is great. But there, especially for us here in Seattle, where we have to take vitamin D because the rain and the clouds cause so much depression, and we're coming out of that as we were entering into spring in March, and then suddenly the city shuts down. So it seemed like just a prolonged isolation, and I think that is definitely hurting, especially here in our city, is that we're not seeing the liveliness that we usually would, and it feels like something's missing.
How has this experience added to your life? And so I know that in our own personal life, we have to find new ways or new margins, especially as you work from home, or as your hours and things as culture shift. What are some of the things that you've added?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things that I've added is just trying to separate work from my normal life. And I think that that's been especially hard since everybody's now working from home and everybody's working different hours. Some people prefer the nighttime. Some people get up at 4 a.m. and work, and some people work late into the night. And I think it's hard to not try and respond to all those different people and to actually stick to your hours. And I think that's been really difficult, starting early on in this phase. I tried working from my bed for a little bit, just when I was doing email stuff, and then I got to the point where I couldn't fall asleep at night because I was just thinking about that, and that was really frustrating. So I switched to the couch, and I switched to like different areas in the house, but still in the evening, once Taylor came home, I still had a mind that was focused on work. So I actually adopted trying to take baths in the evenings, maybe twice a week, just to light a candle, read a book, be entrenched in warm water, and just do anything, listen to classical music while it's going on, and just do anything I could to, and still do, to get out of that headspace of work. And that's been, I think, the most daunting thing.
Yeah. And I think that, for both of us, we've been able to integrate more intimate time into our marriage especially in our first year, but trickling on into our second and even into our third year, we allowed other things in our lives to consume our time, and we really didn't make too much time for one another, even though everyone was telling us before we got married that that's what we needed to do. Well, we are not good listeners. and so this has kind of forced us into that, and it's been really, really wonderful. As other things have come up, we've been able to lean on each other more. So this time that we usually might have been spending at work or with friends or family or whatever, we're now really taking it to spend with one another and being really intentional about how we spend it with one another.
Yeah, and I would even add on to that and say, before COVID even hit, we were trying to be pretty intentional about just decreasing the amount of things on our plate. I feel like the first year or even 2 of our marriage were kind of over-encumbered by just activities and groups, and we had something almost every single night, or in some cases twice a night, and it felt like it was taken away from our marriage. So we were already trying to be intentional about reducing some of those things beforehand. So it's although it's been hard, I think that it's interesting knowing that everything's been canceled for us now instead of us choosing not to be part of those things. So I think that as we ramp up, as COVID starts disappearing and we start getting back into our daily life, it'll feel more natural.
Really thoughtful.
Yes, be thoughtful about what activities we take on and make sure we prioritize our marriage. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we were talking about this before. I mean, it's left room for you guys to even get deeper in your faith and some of those things. The word is kind of, to put that in a package, is be more intentional, right? That I think that emerged from that. And I think I've had to do that. I haven't got the pleasure of the bath part, but I may take a page out of that book. And I need to get a really cool robe. What people don't know is you have a Superman robe that I've seen.
My work attire.
I like to think the S stands for our last name, but it could stand for Superman as well. Yeah. But Seattle, all those kinds of things. Seahawks, sure, everything.
Steelers.
Whoa.
Oh, that's blasphemy.
Whoa, too far.
Too soon.
But in those moments, I've had to do that. When we've spent at some point for the first couple months, as you alluded to, since we got here, we were spending every day here. 7 days a week, we would come to the church and we would do things, and there was always work to be done. And I had some of people around that were around here, including our child center staff, some of our elders that said, hey, you need to pace yourself. You need to be able to take a day. And so I've done that. I've also had an opportunity when I get home, we have this kind of little song, comfy clothes, comfy clothes, comfy clothes. And that's when I can go and put those on. And the kids know that then, Dad's home. I'm not focused on, like you said, that all this work that I've had, or what is the next COVID-related conference that I need to watch or be a part of, that I can be dad as well. And so knowing that we have all those and a husband as well, and knowing how to interact with all those, I think that those are things as we it's been quieted a little bit, and as we get a chance, and the world will inevitably push to claim a stake of our time, it's the most precious commodity that we have. And so how do we protect that? How do we preserve that and not just inundate ourselves to get back onto the treadmill too quickly? I think being with our church family would be great. Obviously, we have those desires to have that fellowship, but how do we limit some of those other things that have vied for some of our most precious commodity in time?
So coming off of that, how have you experienced blessings during this time? There's definitely the storms and there's definitely the hardships, but how have you seen God at work? Have you experienced personal blessings during this time?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Do you want to go first, or you want me to?
No, I want you to go first.
All right, I'll go first. Yeah, I would say Taylor and I have the last probably 9 months have been trying to get more into reading, and we've been trying to get more into just spending more time in the Word of God and learning about history and biblical, both biblical and secular. As far as we're reading Herodotus right now, which is all about ancient histories and whatnot. So I think we're spending more time doing that right now, and I'm even trying to wake up earlier and try to dedicate some time in the morning to reading my Bible and praying, and I think that's been really valid, or just important to keeping myself sane through this time. But another blessing, I think, would just be I've always been a logical person, and I've really developed that need for empathy in my life, and Taylor's been telling me for years that I need to increase my empathy towards people, and I think that this whole experience has really made me want to figure that part of my life out and just delve more into my emotional side and feeling that towards others. So I think that although it hasn't come to fruition quite yet, it's I think the seed is planted, and especially with the recent protests and world things going on right now, I think that that's really chipping away at my logical side and trying to get me to just relate to people more. And I think that that's been really, really valid and just awesome.
Yeah, and we have so many blessings in our life, and I think that one of the most beautiful things that we've seen come from this is the ability for people to really check in on one another and to see how each other are doing. Depression in Seattle is alive and well, and so keeping that in mind, I've seen a lot of people rise to the challenge of how can I do more? How can I be there for my community? How can I be there for my friends and family? How can I be there for the people who are maybe more isolated because they lack the friends and family aspect? And I think that is a really beautiful thing that we have seen. And hopefully we've been able to bless some people in that way. And I think that we've definitely seen people bless us in that way as family and friends reach out to see how we are doing, and not just taking the I'm fine answer and thinking that that's okay, but really asking how are you truly doing. I think it's been really good to see people kind of get past the surface level, and that's been quite wonderful to watch.
Yeah, I think all those things are super important, and I think being able to identify your blessings also helps in the storm. When you have some of those bad days, whether that's mentally or otherwise, whether that's a spiritual attack of Satan trying to divide you or deception that comes your way, that knowing your blessings helps you stand on those truths and kind of combat those feelings and stuff. It's one way I think of the importance and significance of knowing God's word so we can recall it in time of need and stuff. And so I'm really grateful for that. And that kind of goes into our next one. What is a life verse for you, or something that you're using during this time out of God's word that has really spoke to you? Because you guys touched on, as we moved into the stories in the storm, we've had some major social issues and stuff that have taken precedent, controlled our city even more so than a pandemic status quo. And so what's a scripture? What has God spoken to you guys during this time?
Oh, that's a really good question.
I can go first if you want.
Go for it.
I would say one thing I've been trying to be more intentional about for the last few months is saying the Lord's Prayer. I mean, I think I read this whole little devotional about it, just going through line by line, and just how important it is to understand, all the words and how the deep meaning is, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I mean, that's what exactly needs to happen right now. We need God's, we need the earth to be just like it is up in heaven right now, and we need people to strive for that, and we need people to change their lifestyles, and we need people to just realize their own deficiencies and run to Christ and try and be more Christ-like. And I think that just running through those verses when I'm, again, kind of in that solitude at home all the time and going on walks and things like that, I think it's been just really helpful to remind me that ultimately God has a plan, and we are part of that. We may not know how, but...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that for myself, something that I've definitely been feeling, I mean, we're coming off of, COVID's not even done and this has happened, and I was explaining to Daniel, I'm tired, I'm emotionally exhausted, I feel like I have nothing left to give, and it's continuing. I mean, there's probably to a degree still some protests happening right now as we sit here talking. And there's a lot of anger in our city, a lot of pent-up anger. I mean, people have been at home and suddenly they have an outlet, and they're taking that, and they're definitely using it. And I mean, these people they're protesting an injustice, and I think it's hard to see injustices continuing to happen in our world that we think that we're past, that we're maybe not past anymore. We're not past, and I think that it's just bringing us to a position where we need to be on our knees and really seek Jesus. I think that there's comfort in knowing that there's nothing new under the sun. What is happening has happened at some point in history, at some point in the past, and God was in control then, and he's in control now. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of comfort to be taken in on that. And so from that, we have to sit down and think to ourselves, how can we be a part of that healing process and be really thoughtful and intentional, because it's a very unique situation we're in. What some people think is right is not what others think is right, and I think we have to be okay with, we're not looking for man's gratification but from God. So we really need to be looking for, where is he leading us, what empathy, compassion is he leading us into at this time? How are we having good conversations with our family and friends, and how are we bringing together unity and not division? And so it's a question we've been really mowing over the last number of days.
Mm-hmm. And what are the verses? Do you have any verses that you guys had that are in there that you're thinking of that have meant something, or a life verse to you that you go back to during this time to kind of, whenever you feel, this angst coming on? We talked with Mike, and he had Romans 8:28, because mm-hmm. that's a reminder that no matter that he doesn't know where north is, he knows his God, and he knows that he is true north. And so all things, even if they don't seem that way, work for those who are called according to him. And so is there anything that you guys could share? I know we're all taking verses. I've been collecting people's verses. I'm creating a scrapbook of sorts of hey, here's people's favorite verses. And, it's yes, that's awesome. Do you guys have any of those?
Yeah, there's a verse that I go to a lot. I find that sometimes in times of conflict, I find it hard to figure out where my footing is. I tend to, I get a bit overwhelmed, and I can't figure out where do my opinions, where do I actually lie in some of these issues, and how do I, especially with all the noise that we have these days with social media and the internet and the news and everything. So a verse I often go back to, and a lot of times when I am losing my footing, it's actually from Exodus, and it's Exodus 14:14, and it says, the Lord will fight for you, you need to only be still. And this verse comes after Israel has, they've come out of 400 years of slavery, and they're making their way through the desert, and they come up to the Red Sea, and as the Egyptians are about to just absolutely wipe them out, and they are crying to God, why would you have brought us out? It would have been better to just like die in Egypt than to just be like corpses here. And Moses calls out this verse. And so just remembering like, our nation and our world is going through a ringer right now. But, the Lord is fighting for us. He is, even when we can't see it, he so very much is. And if you're still for a moment and you drown out that noise and you look at him, I mean, he's there and he's at work. So don't doubt that for a moment.
I mean, the Lord's Prayer is what, Psalm 23? I don't even know. So,
but the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Lord's Prayer.
But those things I think are super important because they ground us and they root us in something, like you said, is bigger than ourselves. That is has eternity ramifications associated with it, in the sense of we have a place to go, and we run the race to win the prize. And once we realize that prize is not here on earth, and where we don't lay up our treasure here, where thieves can break through and steal, and moss and rust can corrupt. I mean, we have that imagery as we turn on the news, like we talk about every night, that thief can break through and steal, as we've had looting and all sorts of other things that have been a part of our county, part of our city, outlying parts of the city. It's become commonplace that knowing that to quiet the noise, we have God to cling to, that we can come to the foot of his cross and lay down those burdens and rely on him. Because, like you said, some of us are getting mentally and physically exhausted, even though we haven't maybe even been doing the same workload or things that we have. People underestimate the fact that sometimes this plays just a different role that can drain people, and it can take its toll. So thank you for that.
Well, and I would even say just even last week, but while we were in Arizona, somebody they did steal our mail, and they tried kicking down our door. They noticed our car wasn't in the driveway, and I think coming back to that, it probably happened within about 24 hours before we got back. And to build off of, and I think this is before all the protesting even began, so it wasn't related to that, but, or the rioting. I would say that has made us kind of feel less safe at home. So not only are you feeling, emotionally or mentally, but you're also now feeling physically unsafe, that somebody is trying to physically get into your home. And I think that's been, another layer of this all that has been difficult. So.
Nothing says you're in a mission field like that.
Right. Well, thank you guys. I mean, that's a lot. As we kind of talked prior to doing the interview, and I know you even alluded to, well, what do I share? My perspective, I haven't gone through hard stuff. Well, I think you shared up a lot of the emotions and all the areas that, it has impacted both of you, and certainly in different ways, even between, just you two as your, marriage unit, and navigating all that can have so many different feelings and emotions and ways to process things. And so we just so appreciate your willingness and your, wanting to come and just share. And, I'm sure somebody watching will really, understand, and it'll speak to them. So how can we be praying for you? How can the church family come around you guys? What certain prayer requests or anything that we can do to continue to lift you up in prayer?
I think that, just continuing to, for me and probably for both of us, just continuing to feel strength in the mission that Daniel and I have. I've tell many people that if it was our choice, mostly mine, we probably wouldn't live in Seattle. Actually, we'd be in the middle of nowhere on a countryside. But we're here because we feel that we're called here. But in times like these, it both makes it more difficult, in the sense of the safety and the craziness of the city, but also it reminds you like, wow, I'm obviously meant to be here because there's so much darkness, and we as Christians are obviously called here. But that calling has been, it's been harder and harder to grapple with. And so just continuous strength for how can, I guess for myself and maybe for both of us, how can we continue to be like good beacons of light in a city that desperately needs it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say one of the biggest things for me would just be to help with my empathy and kind of like I was talking about earlier, and just I'm really trying to build that solid foundation of biblical knowledge and even, history and theology and all of that. So I feel like I'm in a period of time where I haven't fully found my calling in life yet, but I am trying to just figure out who I am in Christ, and I think that I need to do that before I can really walk into whatever point I'm supposed to be in life and in the walk, So
That's awesome.
Well, again, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for your ministry. Like we alluded, that you've been a part of serving even here at the church and helping with our youth in different capacity, different hats. I am super grateful that you're here. I'm glad that God has called you here and that you felt that and that you guys take that serious, that that's part of your ministry. I'm grateful that you guys also give our church family another perspective of right now. Honestly, a lot of the things that we see when we turn on the news are people your age, my age, that are part of there's a difference between protesters and demonstrators and all these different things, but the young age that have been looting, or like you said, it's given them an outlet, and they don't have jobs and they don't have structure and they don't have these things. I've kind of alluded to it that we almost have had like a gas leak, and it just needed a spark to kind of ignite it, and this has done just that. And so that you guys are another representation that's kind of like, hey, we're called here, we're still doing this is still our part, and everybody's not lumped into the same demographic of who we are. I'm not just a millennial, I'm not just these things, I'm not a title. I am servant of Christ, I am Daniel, and I am Taylor, I am husband, I am wife, I am the Worthens. And so I'm grateful for that. And again, that just gives me hope for our church family. That gives me hope for our city, that there are more people. It's not just a passing phase, that Fairview is not at a twilight part of its existence that's like, oh, well, we've had these really great pillars and saints, and as they've passed on, so has our mission. No, that there's another group of people coming alongside them that will extend that lifeline and fulfill the commitment of spreading the great commitment and loving thy neighbor and doing these things in this community. So thank you for that. Thank you for being different, being set apart. That's what we're called to be, light and salt to preserve. And I think that difference, as we emerge out of this, will allow those that are seeking to seek you out, to know, how are you getting through this? What's different about you? What sustained you? And that will, sometimes you won't always use, I asked for chapter and verse in this interview, but they'll ask, how do you make it? And sometimes you may share that life experience and then lead them into that relationship. But I'm so grateful for that you guys are here, that you're a part of that as we continue to move forward, I hope that our church family gets to see you guys around here for many more years, and myself included. And so thank you for that. And church family, hopefully this has been a great opportunity for you guys to be a participant in another way that we've been able to worship. I'm so thankful for this young couple to the side of us here that has joined us this morning, that has been able to share that they are a part, that they feel called, and hopefully that's encouraging. So you've heard how you can pray for them, and during this week, as you get an opportunity and as you think of them, please be praying for them and lifting them up in their areas of work and ministry. And so thank you so much for allowing us this opportunity to come alongside you. We love you, Fairview. We'll hope to see you soon.